It's about hate. The Last of Us Part 2 has brought out the worst of us. So, this is an article on VG 24/7 by Kirk McKean. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And this is an article that really kind of nails down a lot of what I'm talking about when it comes to the reactions, when it comes to the perceptions of this crazy, overwhelming reaction to the spoilers that have been leaked for The Last of Us Part 2. Now, I'm not going to read everything in this article because, I mean, if you already have kept up with the story, you know exactly what's going on. The top of this article really, for the most part, just goes through, just runs you up to speed on what's going on. So I'll link to the full article in the comments below for this video. But otherwise, I'm just going to go to the stuff that I've highlighted here that, I think is a little bit more important. So this little bit here is just kind of keeping up to speed with what's going on here. And this is the first paragraph that kind of just grabs me and really tells me what I'm about to walk into here. He says, there are legitimate concerns about the well-being of the workers at Naughty Dog, but these concerns have been co-opted and used as an excuse to act abhorrently by a vocal portion of the audience. Now, you can already tell that this article is going to get into okay, so people are just using this as an excuse to trash shit. That may be true. I'm not going to deny that, but the reality is the majority of people that are pissed off, Kirk, this is just straight up, it's because they looked at the story and went, this is really stupid. So, I don't know why you're calling this a vocal portion. You're making it seem like we're not saying a very, very small portion. You're just saying portion. Really makes me think that you believe that this isn't a few people, that this is more than let's say 10%, even 5%. Because I'd be willing to guess that most of the people that are really pissed off at Naughty Dog right now, it has nothing to do with, people doing all this harassment or doing this terrible shit, which he gets into in the article. No, it's just people that are actually really upset with the story that has been supposedly made for this game that a lot of people really put a lot of time into and have put a lot of emotion into. Now, I'm going to say at the top of this too, I have, because this is for people who haven't obviously seen my content, which is pretty much probably everybody that watches this video, I don't have ties to this game. I didn't play this game very much. I put an hour into it, didn't like it, and then let it go. I've kept up with the game just because, it's one of the most highly rated games on the console right now. So naturally people talk about it a lot, and I've kind of just heard the story, from being told to me. So I am kind of aware of what everything was. And I said in a prior video, and that was my radical recap that I posted over the weekend, even as a person who doesn't really have any horse in the race when it comes to Last of Us, I can still recognize that what the spoilers, what the plot leak shows us is garbage. For fans of this series, it makes no sense what they've done with this. Even with better context, I don't get what the point of this game is going to be with the way that it's written, at least from Cliff Notes. Maybe they could tie it all together. It's possible, but it's one of those things where it's you can't look at this on paper and think that there's a way out of it. Fans are looking at this and being no, they're doing all these things I don't want them to do, and I'm not going to spoil it. Just for people that are aware, this is not going to be a spoiler video, so don't worry about that. But the story itself, from how it's written, from where the steps seem to be going, and one particular piece of it, which people will know as is, a person you play as. It's ridiculous. It just doesn't make any sense. And obviously a lot of people took issue with that. So when I see an article that goes with this, as it's, tells you the story and then makes the transition of being people have been using it as an excuse to act terribly, I know that this is going to get into a case of, well, look at all these terrible examples. And I'll read further into this article before I stress my thoughts a little bit more about it, but that's the way it is. So again, talks more about the leak, and then shows stuff about how it actually wasn't, anything to do with Naughty Dog. It wasn't a disgruntled employee, because the thought process is because since there were stories written about Naughty Dog, talking about crunch time and all these things that we hear in the industry that are just really harsh, people thought, okay, well, when the leak came out and it was told that it was somebody who was disgruntled at Naughty Dog and hadn't been paid and blah, 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 people said, well, that makes sense. We've had these articles written on Kotaku, no less, talking about this. So it would make perfect sense that this would be the situation. So people took that and ran with it. And of course, now we've learned, I think it was like maybe 3-4 days later, that we had an official thing saying, hey, it's nobody from Sony, nobody from Naughty Dog. It's just a random group of hackers. So that's this little bit here. But now as we scroll down, this is where it gets a little bit more into the meat and potatoes of this article that kind of gets me going. And by the way, I'm not totally going to trash this article. There are things about this that I do agree with. So I want both people watching this, and even if the author of this somehow sees this, I'm not trashing the whole thing, but there are some things that I do need to clarify here. But anyways, still, despite this proof to the contrary, all stories about the leak being the work of hackers are being bombarded with comments in which people claim Sony and Naughty Dog are lying. Apparently, they're just trying to cover up the fact that this alleged former employee didn't get the bonuses they were promised. According to Bloomberg News reporter Jason Schreier, this is also the former guy that just left Kotaku, Naughty Dog actually did the opposite of holding back pay. Most importantly, rumors of this being an act of protest by a contractor whose pay was robbed are not true, he said. Naughty Dog actually extended pay and healthcare benefits for contractors due to COVID. Yet the conspiracy theory soldiers on because of wallopers on the internet. I believe there is a singular reason for this. It's because this vocal minority of angry internet babies are pissed off that the story isn't catered to them, the protagonists of reality. Okay, so there's a couple things to go in here. So first off, I think there is cadence for people believing that there's lies going on. Because again, if the reason actually is because an employee wasn't getting paid, why wouldn't Sony and Naughty Dog try to hide this fact when a major release that's going to make them millions and millions of dollars, why would they not want to cover this up? Like, I'm not saying this is what's happening, but don't pretend that this couldn't be a possibility. Because, Jason Schreier may actually be saying, yeah, I've been told that this is what's going on. That doesn't necessarily mean it's true, because if the representative talking to him is trying to push us under the rug, because again, they have profits to think about. They have sales to make do with. Because again, the story itself is already abhorrent enough that people are not going to buy this game. But if they find out that Naughty Dog is horrendously treating their employees, then that makes it even worse for them. So they're trying to make as much money back as they can. So even if it were true, why would they ever say that that's the case? They might at worst be quiet. Or at best be quiet, I should say. But in other words, they're going to say that this wasn't a person associated with either Sony or Naughty Dog. Why would you say otherwise? If there's no way of us proving this, then why would we ever do that? Because the person who revealed this is never going to put their name in there because they don't want to get sued. Because they will get their fucking ass sued to death. So of course they're not going to say who they are. So I get it. Like, we seem to now have the information that tells us that it wasn't an employee, but the fact that people, are like, yeah, people are commenting that Sony and Naughty Dog might be lying and that it's a cover-up. Yeah, that's what a fucking conspiracy is. Like, people believe that shit, and this is also one that there's still precedence for. It's not like this is coming out of thin air, and it's not like them being like, no, you're wrong. It's them being like, well, no, we've been told by the same company that Jason Schreier used to work for in Kotaku that there were things going on at Naughty Dog. So they have reason to believe that, there's something there that tells us that the possibility exists. And at the same time, now that we're hearing the opposite, some people are going to go, but wait, you guys said that they were doing this stuff. So it's this weird middle ground where I think both people kind of have a reason to be suspected. I would believe that Jason Schreier's telling the truth, that this is what he's been told, and that's probably what's actually going on. That it was just some random hacker that did this. I can believe that, and I probably would believe that more than it being a conspiracy. But anybody who thinks that Sony and Naughty Dog are lying, they have viable reason. It's not like, sure, it's a reporter who honestly is pretty trustworthy. I would say Jason Schreier is pretty trustworthy. But still, again, they have a reason to believe. There's reasonable cause to think that there is a cover-up because, again, we have the information in front of us that says that Naughty Dog has done some terrible shit to their employees. But anyways, the other part is here in this last one where it suddenly changes tone again and goes, it's because this vocal minority of angry internet babies are pissed off that the story isn't catered to them. So this is where I really started to get a little bit upset. And Kirk, I don't know what angle you're trying to take this from. I kind of figure, but look, for every one person that's bitching about the story not being catered to them, there are more than 100, if not 1,000, for every one person that is pissed off, not because the story isn't catered to them, but because on paper it looks horrible. In the same vein that when people say, watch the Ghostbusters trailer, for every one person that legitimately was mad because it was all women, there were a lot of people that just said, this trailer looks like shit. For every one guy that's being an asshole, Kirk, I guarantee you that there are far more people, 100, 1,000, maybe even more, for every one, that is just mad because of what they see happens. It has nothing to do with who does it, has nothing to do with how, it has nothing to do with when, it just has to do with the fact that it exists, that this plot point exists. It doesn't matter who it was, who the sexuality of this person is, who the gender of it was, the race, none of that shit matters. It's the fucking actual plot point. It has nothing to do with anything beyond that. If there are a few people that are probably doing this, and I can believe that because it's the fucking internet, every position is a thing here. But for every one of them, it's not a majority. And again, because you aren't... See, at least in this one, you said the vocal minority. But even then, it's not even like, calling it a minority still makes it seem like it's a lot of people. But it's not that bad. It's not that crazy. Moving on. Over the years, video games have done their best to pander to them. Yeah, that's what video games are supposed to do. They're supposed to pander to their audience. That's how a business works. Every bit of corporate messaging makes them believe art is for them, and artists are their servants. That is not true. And again, there are people out there that are entitled in anything. The people that stand there at a restaurant and think that everything has to be done for them. The customer is always right stuff. But for every one of them, there's people like me, and a lot more people like me exist than the other, that just go, I just want something that I can play that I'll enjoy. I know that not every game is for me. But here's the thing, Kirk. This game was already done. It's had a form. It's had one copy already. We've had the first game. We had an original, and a lot of people liked it. So they now believe that the next game that comes out with this license name should also be for them, because if they love that game, why would the second one not be? Why would it not be for them? In the same vein that Mass Effect Andromeda pissed off so many people that are big Mass Effect fans. It has nothing to do with anything cosmetic. It has nothing to do with, any sort of progressive ideology. And it's not even like an entitlement thing. It's, dude, I played 3 games that were all really good, ending of Mass Effect 3 aside, and this piece of shit comes out. Of course I'm going to be upset about that shit. And with people so, into the first Last of Us game, and seeing what this story is for the second one, and obviously not the whole thing, but seeing enough to know that this is not good, they're upset. And it's not because they believe that they think that they should be catered to. It's because their expectation of a video game is that you don't intentionally make something that would make people upset. And this isn't the kind of upset that's like, you want to see somebody get their comeuppance. No, this is just making people upset. Video games are an escape. This isn't something daily, especially now with all of COVID going on. People are fucking miserable. They're worried about so much shit. Video games are supposed to be this escape right now. And if a game comes out that serves to crush everything that they love, why would they enjoy that? That's not for anybody then. So for them to say it's like, they're not assuming Naughty Dog owes them anything. Actually, you would probably ask the Last of Us gamers, they didn't even want a sequel. The ending was fine for the first one. I've talked to several people who have played the game, and they all said the same thing. Why did they make another? It was fine. And again, it's all about the money. That's all it is. So if you believe that, people think art is for them, it should be, but we all know it's not, because we've seen what the game industry has become. It's become money-grubbing assholes. It's become a business just like Hollywood, just like music, just like television. It's all the same now. And that's why people are getting more upset with shit. Because they're becoming more and more aware that the industry does not give a fuck about them. And that's frustrating when you spent so much of your childhood and so much of your teenage years, especially in my case being 32, I've spent so much of my time just believing that this was all just supposed to be a fun getaway. And now I'm looking at, in the last 5, maybe even 10 years now, of how game companies, journalists, and all other facets of the industry are collectively coming in and ruining the enjoyment of things. Whether it's articles like this that focus on the few and make it seem like it's widespread, or what the industry does, where they take something that we love and trash it or try to monetize it so much and milk it. I mean, take a look at Star Wars. Big example. Again, moving on. We do this for you, the gamer, says the corporate overlord who wants to sell you a product. Don't like something? No worries, we'll patch it out. Well, yeah, look at No Man's Sky. They fucked up that real bad. They patched the shit out of it, and now people actually really like it. Same goes for a game like Rainbow Six Siege. That's what you're supposed to do. If nobody wants to play your fucking game, you either fix it or you move on. And sometimes people don't get to move on because they can't afford to. And then this is where it just gets a little bit silly. It's basement-dwelling shitlords who complain about characters' breast sizes. If they're realistic, it's an SJW game and it's censorship. If they're massive cartoon tits, that's just artistic integrity, dude. Okay. What's your definition of realistic here? This is the one paragraph that I really had an issue with. What does this have to do with anything? What does it have to do with this article? It has nothing to do with The Last of Us. Nothing. It has to do with what happens to characters in this game. It means nothing about how they look. Let's make this very clear. This is a whole nother conversation. I'm not going to get deep into this, but straight up, let's just say this. Shitlords who complain about characters' breast sizes. Okay, I'll bite on that. If it's a new character, who gives a fuck? If they're bitching, then fuck them. That's straight up. If they are bitching about a brand new character's bust, then fuck them. Who cares? Let's say, for example, Tifa from Final Fantasy VII Remake went from her obviously very ample proportions to a B cup. Yeah, that would be annoying because that's not who the character is. That would be annoying. I wouldn't even say it's censorship, it's just stupid. It's just, again, it's why are you doing this? Like, that's not the original character. It's the same people that have been going around and talking about Final Fantasy VII. It's like, oh, the voice acting for Barrett is so racist. I'm like, no, it's not. It's an homage to Mr. T. That's what it was back in the day. They're just doing it again. No one was talking about this when the game first came out. So again, it's just bringing up shit for the sake of arguing it. I don't get it. And like I said, this section of the article makes no sense to apply to what's going on here because it has nothing to do with it. But I'm going to move on because I don't want to waste that much more time of it. Anyone who's played The Last of Us knows Ellie is gay and these shitbirds use that fact as a shield. I like the first one, so I'm clearly not mad that the game is progressive, they'll say, except Ellie's sexuality was only explored in an optional DLC. In The Last of Us Part 2, it's clearly part of her character and she even has a love interest. Again, you do realize that if people really like the first one, they probably played the DLC. Not to mention, even if they didn't, they probably heard that she's gay. And again, for the most part, I've seen a few people, and again, it's so hard to discern what's a real upset, like hateful response, and people that are just making fun of it. It's like I think the get woke go broke stuff is cringy as shit. Like, they are allowed to do what they want. It's just at the risk of making a little bit of money if that's what you want. I mean, here's the thing. I'm a guy who loves sexual content. Like, I'm a harem anime guy. I like currently I'm playing a game called Punchline. You've seen, if you're on my channel, you can see it, where it's literally a visual novel about a character who has to explore as a ghost and try to avoid seeing underwear, because if that character sees underwear twice, the world explodes. It's stupid. And yeah, you see there's a lot of ass shots. But again, I like the fact that Ellie being gay doesn't mean anything, and people just using that as a shield. Like, where is the connection there? Again, it's if there are people that are actually upset about the game that, oh, there's a gay person in it, then again, fuck them. Who cares? Just throw those guys to the side. Stop giving them that attention. They're assholes. Just leave them alone. They ain't gonna say much if there's nothing for them to feed off of. But again, like, I can agree with you if the gist of this conversation had anything to do with that. But again, it's another piece of the story that means nothing with this leak. It's bringing up stuff that has nothing to do with it. And then the last little bit here before we move on, I won't go into spoiler territory, but The Last of Us Part 2 also features other forms of representation, and the reaction to this has been abhorrent. And I know what it means. It's the fact that people think, I don't think it's proven. I don't know enough about the game to know if it's actually a true thing, but people are coming to the conclusion that Abby, who is a character that is part of the ires of people right now when it comes to this spoiler leak. people think that she's trans. And I have been, say, on the Last of Us 2 subreddit, and I have seen not a lot, but I've seen more than enough to go, okay, well, this isn't like a very minuscule thing that's happening on some random thing. No, there's some people like putting this at the front page if they can. Like I saw one meme that was showing, I guess the part where you kill a surgeon in the first game, and it's like, and it just talks about, again, I don't want to be that crazy about spoiling anything, so I'm not gonna say, I'm not gonna say it, but the word tranny is used in it, and again, why are we using that word? Like, that part I understand. Why the fuck are they using that word? You don't have to use that word. And again, let's even talk further about that. If anybody is actually upset that the character is trans, like, again, fuck off. It doesn't mean anything. It's a new character, by the way, too, Abby. I've seen people be like, oh, it looks like a dude. So what? It doesn't even have to be a transgendered person. It could be just a very masculine-looking girl. Those exist. I mean, there are very feminine-looking men. There's no difference. It doesn't have to be a transgender issue. It could just be a very muscular tomboy. Like, again, the whole idea of people getting so up in arms because a person is trans is stupid to me. And as a bisexual guy, I understand that stuff. It's the same thing with Ellie being gay. If anybody was upset about Ellie being gay, like, fuck off. Like, come on. It's such a non-issue. There's no reason to get that upset about it. But when it comes to people actually being upset about Abby potentially being trans, and again, it's not even proven yet as far as I know, that I understand. I'm totally in agreement that the reactions to that are really stupid. Because here's the thing. If you're anybody that is actually doing this stuff of making memes about Abby being trans and shitting all over it, guys, it has nothing to do with what's wrong here. Her being trans has nothing to do with anything of this leak. Even if that's true or not. It has nothing to do with it. Be mad at what happens in the spoilers. Don't give a fuck about who the person is. It doesn't matter. Because you would still be mad if it was another white male doing it. You would still be upset. If you took Abby out and replaced it with a white male, it wouldn't change anything. People would still be upset because the story is what the problem is. So if you're actually upset about Abby being trans, again, if this is the case, you're an idiot. I'm sorry, but that's stupid. It has nothing to do with anything. Last bits here. Director Neil Druckmann has also shared some of the anti-Semitic comments he's been receiving on Instagram. It's a barrage of bile. Yeah, that's bullshit. If you're sending the guy threats, and I've seen that he's been sent death threats and horrible messages, guys, what the fuck? Stop doing that shit. If you want to complain to him and give him shit, just tell him that. Say, I saw what you guys have written. That's fucking bullshit. You don't have to go to threats. Why the fuck do we go to threats? And this goes for both sides of the equation. Why do we resolve to this shit? I've never sent a death threat in my life to anybody. Why would I do that? Why am I so involved in something that I would need to send a person a threat saying, I'm going to fucking kill you for this? Why? Why would I do that? That's retarded. So yeah, for the people who are sending that shit, stop. That's stupid. Then there's the sad people who have created Twitter accounts just to reply to tweets with spoiler videos and messages. Said this as well. If you're doing that, you're an asshole. Again, spoilers are actually not that hard to avoid if this isn't what's happening. If it's just an article, pretty easy to avoid. Sometimes if it's in comments, again, easy to avoid. Don't read comment sections. Don't go through Twitter threads. That stuff's pretty easy. Quite in all honesty, if I had chosen not to open the article that showed the leaks, I think it was Reset Era that I read it on, I never would have known. I would have had no idea. No idea. My friends that I told probably wouldn't have known had I not told them. They would have known that there was a leak, but they wouldn't have known what it was. It's not that hard to avoid. And if you're really that worried about it, again, stay off that shit. You don't have to go through every subreddit. You don't have to go through every comment section. You don't have to go through all these tweets, Facebook posts, all this shit. You don't have to. There are 1,000 other things you can read. You don't have to do that stuff. But then when there are people that fuck around with that, like I've heard of things of people posting completely unrelated memes and then in the middle of the meme they show a big spoiler. That stuff I cannot agree with. That's so stupid. Stop doing that shit too. That's not funny. Stop. It even said it goes as far as to even during the Valhalla stream, people were doing it. Again, stupid. Unbelievably stupid. Yet these people dare to hide behind the working conditions at Naughty Dog. Any criticism of them is shut down and they claim you don't care about the workers. If you truly believe that, ask yourself this. How would you feel if you worked your fingers to the bone on something for 5 years and the conversation around it turned into one of the most toxic events in video games right at the final hurdle? I can only imagine how demoralizing these past few weeks have been for the team at Naughty Dog. Okay. They will suffer a downturn in sales. There's no doubt. I saw another article that was talking about, the dark side of fandoms. I think it was Inverse was the company that did this. And they were talked about, say, examples like Avengers Endgame, Game of Thrones, Star Wars Rise of Skywalker, about how they all got spoiled and it affected them. Yeah, it did. Did you also notice, though, that Avengers Endgame got leaked and they still became the highest grossing worldwide box office in history? Star Wars still made over $1 billion in the box office. And Game of Thrones Season 8, it was a shit season to begin with, according to a lot of people, so I don't think it would have mattered, but you know that they still got their viewership. The Last of Us Part 2 is still going to make a ton of money. There is no way they are not going to make profits and not get bonuses. They're going to be fine. Now, is it frustrating that all this hard work that they've done has turned into not one of the most toxic events, but a somewhat toxic event? Yes, that would suck. I'm not going to deny that. However, to act like this is such a huge thing, it's not. This isn't Gamergate. This is nowhere near Gamergate. Stop over expanding this shit. Stop going over the top about it. I know you're going for clickbait here. I know you're trying to get people upset, and I know because it's working on me. This isn't the case. Does it suck that these people worked their asses off, apparently in crunch time, to get this thing out? Yeah, that sucks that it got revealed, and some people are going to buy it. But that's not the gamer's fault, and it shouldn't be put at the burden of the people who made the game. It should be the burden of the person who wrote it. And apparently that's Neil Druckmann, the director. That's on him. He didn't have to write a story like this. If everything that is in that leak is true and that's what happens, then yeah, you should have known that this was going to be the reaction, because if the leak didn't come out, let's be completely honest, there would be just as much uproar. It just would have been 2 months later, guys. Or if the game was going to be released later, whenever that game came out, this was going to happen. Because again, going back to what everybody seems to be trying to talk about, actually surprisingly, Kotaku, Polygon, and the usual suspects have been pretty quiet about it, which has been shocking to me. I even read Kotaku comment sections, and people were mostly saying, yeah, this story is bullshit if this is what's going on. It still isn't even that crazy about talking about all this racism and sexism and transphobia and all this shit. No, it's actually pretty tame there. To be completely honest, it's justified for people to be this upset. And I don't think that this is nearly as bad as this article seems to make it seem. I've seen stuff. But to be completely honest, as someone who is all over the place, I subscribe to different subreddits from different spectrums because I try to get both sides of this shit. I'm not seeing an overwhelming fuck trans people, fuck, women, fuck. No, I'm not seeing, I'm seeing the, yeah, I do see it. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's not a lot. It's more people that are just upset that something stupid happened in this story that doesn't make any sense for fans. That's what it is. And is it a shame that people who work their asses off are getting a little bit of blowback now? Yeah, because, again, don't be throwing threats and a lot of insults at people who just have nothing to do with, Druckmann, I'd say you can throw some heat his way, because if this is what he thinks was a good story, yeah, he deserves some heat for it. But that doesn't mean calling him really, really abhorrent words. It doesn't mean sending him death threats. That's different. But for somebody to say, fuck you, this is a bullshit story, that's justifiable in my opinion. The last paragraph here, the worst part is there's nothing anyone can say or do to change their minds. I mean, the game might come out and that might change it. But right now, no, you can't. You look at that, again, you look at that spoiler list, Kirk, and you tell me that that's a good-looking story. I know that context isn't a thing here, but just cliff noting it, tell me how that seems good to people who actually genuinely care about this game. Because again, I have no attachment to this game, and I can still see that this is total garbage of what's going on. Because it's a slap in the face to fans. It's taking what they love and just... That's what they're doing to people who love this game. It's not a good story. And maybe they can salvage some of it. For all I know, when the game comes out, people will be like, okay, that wasn't that bad. But on paper, it looks horrible, and I believe they're justified in being really pissed off about it. It doesn't matter that there's proof this leak was external. It doesn't matter that a guy on VG247 has written an article pointing out the absurdity of it all. None of it matters. That's because the anger was never really about that. The anger is there because Naughty Dog dared to make a video game story that seemingly strays from the norm. It's no wonder most developers play it safe. After all, it was never about working conditions, it's about hate. That's the last thing here that I have to tell you, you are fucking wrong about. This is not about hate. It's about anger towards a story that is not cool to a fan base that genuinely cares about this series. If there are, like I said earlier, if there are people that are mad because Abby is actually trans, again, if that's true, or if because it's a woman, or because of whatever, if it has something to do with gender, race, sexuality, or whatever, ignore them. They're assholes and shouldn't be listened to. But the majority of people are pissed about this leak, not because of hate, not because of racism, sexism, transphobia, misogyny, all that normal buzzword stuff that the progressive ideologues like to toss around. No, this is about a bullshit story, plain and simple. And before it came out, because a reminder, it came out with the story that it was a disgruntled employee. So the initial few days of anger carry that because that was told to us as fact. Then when it came out otherwise, the story has mostly drifted from people to fuck Naughty Dog for what they've done, and this is just double. Now it's just, okay, fuck Naughty Dog for the story, but this hacker's a piece of shit too. If I'm going to tell you what this is actually about, it is about a bad story that slaps the fans of this series in the face. It was partially about working conditions. Even when we thought it was about Naughty Dog's working conditions, it was still majority about a bad story. And it's never been about hate. Never was about hate. Whatever a bunch of morons that have no input because they actually don't care about this series, and whatever a bunch of trolls are doing, because again, I don't believe most of what I read anymore, because comment sections and Twitter threads are just a 50-50 coin flip on people being serious or just being a prick because they're trying to elicit a reaction. It's not about hate. As someone who has no skin in this game, I can tell you it's not about hate. Unless that hate is towards a bad writing decision, it's not about hate. And that's going to be it for this. So thank you so much, guys, for checking out this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like it, subscribe to the channel for more content, comment below what you thought about it, and we'll see you on the next one.